Hey guys, it's Jordan, aka Angelus, here again with part 3 of 4 of our 400 No Limit Rush poker series. Today I'm going to be playing 2 tables again and kind of just focusing on the same stuff that I've been preaching in the last 2 videos. Just kind of using the numbers that I have on a lot of the regs and looking for ways to exploit them and looking especially to be isolating fish and playing a lot of pots heads up with fish. So without further ado, let's get it started. Today the player pool seems to be pretty saturated. It seems to be a lot more reggy than it normally is. So hopefully we're getting into some good spots with some regs that I have decent samples on. Here we get 3-bet by someone who's pretty tight. I don't think he's 3-betting here as a bluff that often, and I don't think he has a lot of hands on me. So I think to avoid nasty flops where we end up, not getting max value from hands that he's going to stack off, I'm just going to go ahead and 4-bet and hope that he's got a hand he's willing to go with. I don't think, we only have about 700 hands on him, and I don't think that he's going to have any read on us that makes him think that we're folding there a lot. So I really think that just 4-betting, getting max value with our hands is going to be the best decision. If he was someone that had, a ridiculously high 3-bet there, or perceived me as being someone that folds a lot, I'd probably reevaluate that decision and probably be flatting quite often. But in that specific spot against that tight of a reg, I think 4-betting is just by and large the best play. There with King 2, the villain in question wasn't folding his big blind that often to steal, so I think it'd probably be a mistake to steal with King 2 off. It's probably not terrible, but I think they're just better hands to be stealing with, specifically more suited connected kind of hands. Here I'm going to go with check, check, check. I think leading with pocket 2 is the only play. Here with the table almost entirely full of regs, I think 3s under the gun is probably a little bit loose. And here I think after we check all the flop, we have a mandatory river lead. Check raising the flop is another way of playing the hand if we're going to continue with some backdoor equity. But I think that check calling is going to be fine. I don't think that's a board that's going to get barreled off a ton without some kind of equity himself. So I think that we can comfortably kind of check call the flop, and when the turn goes check check, that's pretty much going to be him kind of waving a flag that he either has a medium strength showdown hand or has pretty much completely whiffed. So That being said, I definitely think leading there is going to be best on the river. I think if his c-betting stat was above, like a 55%, 60% on the flop, then we could kind of flirt with the idea of check raising the flop. It might become better the more frequently he's c-betting those kind of flops. But I think it's just a board where he's going to be checking back a lot of stuff and more or less betting kind of polarized. So the polarized c-betting range on that flop, check calling is probably going to be the better way of going. Here, flatting with ace-10 is okay. I think 4-betting as a bluff is okay, also fine. I think he probably perceives me as pretty tight, so he doesn't think I'm bluffing that often here. Or like as often as some of the other regs might be. And yeah, I think he might be getting a little bit out of line against me as well, so I'd rather 4-bet it and fold than defend it in the in some kind of shitty spots post flop. I'm just gonna check how many table this guy's playing. I don't recognize the name, so it's pretty likely that he's one table. Yeah, so I'm gonna assume that he's a weaker player, and I'm gonna defend with threes. And I'm just hoping that he has an ace high hand here and that we get to show down our hand. Quite often we'll have the best hand here if it goes check check. When he leaves the river, it's pretty interesting. I think he might be bluffing here sometimes, so I think we have the best hand. He might be turning some kind of random high card hand into a bluff sometimes. But I don't think we get him off of obviously a flush or an 8 ever, so I'd rather call and hope that he shows me some kind of ace high or whiff hand than raise and get him to not fold nearly enough. I think this is a call. He's going to have enough pocket pairs and complete whiffs that we can call this with our ace high and be pretty confident about it, I think. All pocket pairs under jacks there have been counterfeited, so I think he's going to turn them into a bluff with a pretty high frequency after it's gone check check like that. So he'd be pretty comfortable calling there, especially because he's also going to have some like suited connected stuff that he decided to complete going three-way that are all going to have whiffed, and he's almost certainly going to be leading the turn with trips, so he would have had to have been value betting, I think it was with Jack X, sorry, Queen X. If he didn't lead the turn with it, is what he'd have to be value betting there, which is like, seems very, very unlikely. Here now, I think to get him off some random like pair hands, I think we're going to be betting. We can definitely have hit this board and even check back a decent hand on the flop. And yeah, I think I'm just going to fire a second one here. I expect to get folds from a good portion of his range. I don't think he thinks we bluff that often this way. So even though it might be hard for him to perceive a value hand for us, it's going to be a lot less likely that he looks us up because that's just not a line that people take for as a bluff rather. And because we're cold calling versus an under the gun open, it like strengthens our range quite a bit. So we definitely can have quite a few hands that have hit there. He would basically need to feel like we're bluffing with hands like ace queen there, like just about every time, to feel comfortable calling down with a bluff catcher there. Here we're gonna have a very standard 3-bet. We'd be getting it in if he 4-bets. Here we have a guy who's folding 73% of his big blinds to steal, so I think this is a great spot to steal with like just about any two, like pretty wide anyways, until this stat starts to get a lot lower. I mean, once it hits 60, then we might start to reconsider that idea, but other than that, I think we can steal like any two if he's anywhere above like 60 or 65. Here we're gonna have a pretty easy value bet, I think. I'm here with a guy who I don't have any reads on in the big blind and a weaker player behind. I think this is a fine open. I'm not going to be defending. I just want to make sure. He's 3-tabling, so he might not be like a weaker player, but I still think queen 5 suited there is fine, with the potential of there being two weaker players behind. Here this call's not like great. It's not bad either. I think that Jucifer is a lot less likely to be 3-betting there. Given that there's a weaker player behind, he's likely to get cold called by a fairly wide range, so he's aware of that. And I think also because of the weaker player being there, it's pretty likely that the pot ends up going multi-way, which is ideal with a hand like Queen Jack suited. You're generally going to flop nutted draws, both in terms of flush draws and straight draws. A case can be made for both 3-betting and calling with ace-5 suited here. I like to 3-bet here. I probably would be mixing it up quite a bit. I think both are totally fine. You have a couple interesting spots here. I think readless, basically with the ace-5, c-betting is going to be my standard decision. Most of his hands are going to have to sigh and check fold, at least by the turn. On the left-hand side with the king-4, I'm probably going to turn my hand into a bluff. I think we can get to the river with enough value combos that it makes sense to bluff here. He's never going to fold that hand. How many check raises? I just don't think, like, unless he's like just absolutely awful, he's not doing this as a bluff like ever really. He's probably just doing it thinly with something like, you know, pocket 9s or 10s that he decided he is down to get it in with right now. Otherwise, I think that his play would be absolutely like awful with any kind of bluff. Because just in general, I'm not going to be folding very often here. Like I can have 4s and stuff like that in my range. I can have 6x in my range. He can't have any of that in his range really. So like my range is so much stronger than his there that it makes no sense for him to check raise as a bluff. So basically my way of dealing with that is just kind of like taking a note of it, and like I'll remember that, and then should that happen again, I might decide to look him up in a different spot with a different hand. But I just don't think people are going to get out of line on that kind of board very often in a 3-bet pot. Had I had something like ace-king there, I'm probably not going to be folding. I'll either be calling in position or 3-betting and getting it in. Because he is going to bluff like a non-zero percentage of the time. And ace-king obviously has like good equity versus any hand there that isn't, you know, specifically pocket 6s that flop the boat. That he's probably folding more often than not anyways, so. Here we just check back our pocket forward, expecting to have the best hand a decent amount. That's certainly a value bet for him on the river with the jack, I'd imagine. I don't see a reason not to. Here against a weaker player, we're obviously getting our hand in. I want to make this 4-bet. I probably should have made it even a little bit bigger against a weaker player. Again, I'm going to size it really small to get him to spaz with some of the random hands he's going to show up with. Also to peel me light, play back at me a little bit more, stuff like that. And now we just get it in. Obviously, I don't even want to run it twice against the fish. Let me get it in, like basically just flipping. But yeah, I think something to think about against fish in spots like that, when you have the board just totally crushed, checking is obviously going to be fine, but given the dry nature of the board and how fish have a tendency of checking back hands that they shouldn't be, or checking back hands that you don't want them to check back, I definitely prefer a small bet. It'll get them to spaz out and kind of like overplay any ace-x that they've hit there. They're going to overplay and get in a lot of the time. And then it's additionally, they're going to like raise bluff a decent amount and then fold to your shove, and you just get a lot more money that way. We've been 3-betting this guy quite a bit. This is probably like our 4th time 3-betting him at this point in the video. So I think he's realizing that we're 4-betting him a lot. Or 3-betting him a lot, rather. Versus a 4-bet, I think we'd probably flat and play fairly straightforward post-flop. Because I think our hand's going to do pretty well. I expect him to just defend by flatting a lot. Here in this flop, I think we're going to c-bet with 2 overs and a backdoor decent flush draw. there's not too many hands I expect him to raise, like stack off here. So I expect him to continue by calling if he's continuing the hand more often than not. If he raises, we have a pretty easy fold. And we have a decent amount of equity with like our backdoor flush draw and 2 overs, even if he has a hand like an 8 or pocket 7s or something like that. We're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on subsequent streets. So I definitely prefer a c-bet here. And we hit a card that helps our hand equity-wise, so I definitely like a bet as well. With the intention of check calling most heart rivers, I think. I think that we're not going to get a hero call out of many worse hearts that often, so I think check calling is probably going to be best. He's not going to be raising this turn very often. So yeah, I think when we get to the river like this, we probably just need to be folding, check folding. I don't think he's going to turn much into a bluff. I think he can have flushes himself, obviously. Very rare he has a 4, but I just don't think he folds enough. And here with top set, we're just going to 3-bet our hand and try to get the money in here. I don't think there's any other play, really. If he has 9-10, great, good for you. But I think it's more often that he just got some kind of 2-pair, or is bluffing, and given the board texture that like any card that comes is basically going to make 4 to a straight, I don't really like the idea of not 3-betting the flop. Certainly will be just flatting some of the time, but I think that I have this guy tagged specifically as a tighter player as well, so I don't think he's like just pulling some random bluff all that often. Here you pick up a gut shot and there's a weaker player in the pot, so you can have a really wide range that's completely with this board. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to steal the pot right away. Here again, I'm going to be c-betting. We have a backdoor flush draw, 2 overs, and a 9 to the nuts. When he raises, it's just a pretty easy fold, though. Here we're going to have a pretty easy spot to just be 3-barreling. Just about any run out, pretty much. Debating an overbet here. I don't think it's necessary. I don't even like it, really. I think it's a spot where we're going to be barreling, proceed to be barreling a lot of our good clubs. A lot of our good clubs on the turn, so we'll have completed there. We also have a bunch of boats in our range that he doesn't have. So range against range, like when we compare our range against his, he's almost always in a spot where he has to bluff catch. And so that's actually a good position for us, where we can turn his entire range, like including basically the top of it, besides the random boats that he'll have a couple combos of. We turn his entire range pretty much into a bluff, or a bluff catcher rather, so. I think we can defend this hand versus a 3-bet pretty comfortably. And when he checks, I think we're going to go ahead and try to just steal the spot. I think this hits us pretty wide. We're going to hit the 9-10 kind of flops like quite often, more often than he is probably. When he check calls, I think, and we hit a pair there, I think we're just going to check it back. And then hope that he has some kind of ace high or like straight draw hand, pocket 8s. It's interesting that he's 3-betting that hand there. It's probably not a very good 3-bet against me, specifically. I think in order for pocket 8s to be a really good 3-bet there, the villain either has to be defending a ton of suited crap, or be 4-betting way too much, that it makes 5-bet shipping 8s there profitable. So overall, I think that's probably a mistake for him to be 3-betting that hand. He should probably just be flatting it. If he had a little bit more of a stack, I'd probably be 3-betting him here to get the pot heads up. But with only like 50 blinds roughly, I think that's probably not the best idea. On this board where it's pretty much just a mandatory check fold for us. His range just crushes this, and ours really doesn't that much unless we specifically hit like a set or a straight with our suited like 9-10. Right, 9-10 was the straight, right? Yeah. To balance that, I'm probably check calling a lot of decent hands there, including like overpairs. Because I expect that's a spot where a lot of the good regs are probably going to fire 3 with a decent amount of their bluffs, knowing that it's hard for us to continue and call. Here we can do both 3-bet and just call. I'm looking to 3-bet this time, I think because it's suited, it makes it a little bit more of a 3-bet. Versus a 4-bet is kind of a gross spot, but we probably just have to get our hand in. It's not specifically like terrible or anything like that, it's just not great, especially without any history with the guy. We'd definitely rather just see him flat than 3-bet. That being said, yeah, I think suited is like almost a mandatory 3-bet. Offsuit, you can mix between calling and 3-betting. I think both are fine. Nut flush draw. Now we hit the nut flush. I think I'm going to go for a check raise on the turn here. I think he's going to bet any heart. He'll bluff sometimes, so we get value out of his bluffs. Yeah. Certainly check calling there with the idea of check raising rivers is probably good too, because I think the thought that he's going to bet a lot of random bluffs there, or stuff that he's turning into a bluff anyways, is probably true, and given that, he's probably also following through on a fair number of rivers, so I think check calling might even be better there. Here with a weak player behind, I'm going to make a pretty loose call with Queen 6 suited, expecting it to go multi-way a lot. When it doesn't, it's kind of unfortunate, but still a fairly decent hand. Good enough to check call for sure anyways. Versus a turn barrel, we have a decision to make. We're probably going to fold without any reads on this guy. Just because even if we're good right now, almost any hand that he has that isn't complete air is going to have a good equity against us. Or some kind of equity anyways. And we can also be like drawing basically dead, so. This guy's folding his big blind almost 80% of the time to steal, so this is just like any two pretty much can do here. Whereas a 3-bet, we're going to have an easy fold. until he gives us a reason to not want to fold that kind of hand. Return trip, so we're just going to go bet for value. I think when he checks back that flop, he's probably checking it back with a lot of like showdownable hands. I expect him to probably bet most of his decent flush draws there, so yeah, when it goes like that, I think he's a lot more likely to check back if we get checked to him on the river than he is to bet as a bluff. So you basically want to make him hope that he bluff catches a little bit more often than he should be there. Here we have 40 blinds against a 40 blind stack. Trying to get our stack in. You can have some worse flush draws that he's getting in, some 10x that he's gonna like raise get in sometimes. So we're certainly not doing terrible against that. He can also be bluff raising sometimes too. Here we're playing against a pretty aggressive, pretty speedy guy. We flop a pretty good hand. That being said, on this turn, I think I would probably just be folding. But now when it goes check check, I think we have the best hand more often than not. I mean, just show it down. That queen 7 probably shouldn't have been a quick fold. I should have been waiting for that, especially with a guy who's like got a 70-something% big blind fold to steal. It's sitting in the big blind. I should definitely be waiting for that hand. That's definitely one of the pains of rush poker is preemptively quick folding. The amount of times that I've done that with like pocket aces and stuff like that is pretty absurd. Here against the weak goat, we are going to definitely be raising this. Sizing is something to consider. He's got 60. He's basically got 186 there. So something that's going to leave us like a pot size shove is probably best. So that should be about right, I think. My math's not too off. So we're just shoving like every turn here. And that is disgusting, obviously. But that happens, obviously. And these are the guys that we want to be playing with us. Yeah, that sucks. Here we're going to bet. We have backdoor flush draws and stuff like that. Checking back because of the stack size is another thing to consider. Because he is going to check raise this flop a decent amount. But I think I'm going to bet here. It sucks when he check raises, obviously. Not much we can do but fold. There's so many draws on this board that like not c-betting is pretty criminal. Sucks that he's gonna have some 2 pairs and stuff like that too, but you definitely want to c-bet for value with like the best 1 pair. Anyone's gonna have there. We have nothing to do but to call here. I don't think raising's gonna accomplish much. I don't think he's folding much. Again, I think just checking's best. He's not gonna fold many pairs. We still have a decent equity, and then betting fairly small I think is the best here. Hopefully he'll look us up with one pair. If not, you know, some of the random two pairs he might show up with. He's opening 15% from early position over a pretty small sample, so there's not much to like consider about in terms of that sample size because it's pretty small. That being said, if he does fire the river pretty big, I don't think he's bluffing that often, so I think we'd have a fold. That's just a terrible check by him, like absolutely abysmal. He needs to be value betting that river, obviously, in my opinion. When he checks there, I expect to have the best hand almost always, unless he's like trapping with something. Here versus a guy who squeeze a lot, I'm gonna kind of like trap here with aces, hoping for a chance to back raise. We also get to like under rep our hand and be able to check raise like a lot of flops and stuff like that, which is exactly what we're gonna do versus c-bet, should he decide to c-bet. And he's actually been disconnected now, which kind of sucks. Here, when he bets this flop in this turn, I mean, he's 3-betting this guy with every single hand, basically, that really connects with his board. So, I just don't see him having anything. If he fires the river, it's kind of an interesting spot, because, like, I don't think he's also bluffing like this that often. But yeah, I just don't see what he could ever have here, other than, like, pocket sevens or something. He can definitely have some flush. I think he has got a lot of flush draw combos too. I think he 3-bets ace king, aces, even ace jack a lot. Sometimes he'll flat like aces and kings specifically, but like he wouldn't bet kings on the flop, pre-flop, just to try to get a squeeze in. So I think I'm actually good here a lot versus like a busted flush. Especially against that specific villain who's going to have like a little bit wider range than most there, and it's going to be a lot more likely to fire 3. I think he's not also thinking enough that he's, you know, he just got opened under the gun by like a weak player. He's going to be 3-betting ace king, ace jack, ace queen, all that kind of stuff that would value bet 3 times there. He's going to be 3-betting all that stuff pre-flop, so can't really have a hand there for value unless he specifically got like pocket sevens, which is like a kind of meh call by him pre-flop. I think I've got a value bet here for sure, on the smaller side. Get value from his worst aces that he can open under the gun. Something like, you know, ace jack or ace x small suited kind of thing, or pocket sevens that he decides to hero me with sometimes. I definitely like a smaller sizing there because of his range being so weak. And because we both kind of know that his range is weak, like both players in the hand realize how weak his range is. So that being said, he realizes how weak his range is, so he knows that for me to bluff, I don't need to bluff a big amount in order to get a lot of folds because of how weak his range is. So I think it makes a lot more sense to value bet on a smaller scale because it'll just price him in a lot more knowing that I'm still going to bluff that size regardless. If this was suited, I'd be a lot more inclined to be 4-betting it this deep. Just because it's going to play a lot better post-flop. That being said, I think I'm just going to fold the hand. If it was suited, I'd be 4-betting it pretty often there, I think. He's folding his big blind to steal 70% of the time. So again, that's a number that's going to be high enough that I can just steal any two, I think. I feel pretty confident about it. Gutter and a weakish backdoor flush draw. I like a c-bet here. He's not folding enough to 4-bets here to be 4-betting this at the bluff. I'd much rather have some kind of hand that's got a blocker. And a jack just really isn't a good enough blocker. Yeah, and I think firing 3 here is going to be totally fine. The only hand I can see him showing up with really that is going to be having no problem calling is going to be like, Queen 10 you can certainly have. And King Jack sometimes. But other than that, I think he's going to be folding a lot by the river. Versus raise, you obviously have a very easy fold. Like there's no hand that he's raising on the turn that isn't a bluff or a Queen 10, I don't think, and he's pretty tight. So I just don't think I think he's got Queen 10 there like the vast majority of the time, or some kind of really good combo draw that he decides to not raise on the flop and raise the turn for whatever reason. So I think barreling the turn's good because we have a blocker to the nuts, the only hand that really he's going to raise very often. And we also obviously can hit the nuts with a 10 on the river. And most of the hands that are going to make really strong hands on that flop are going to be ones that he's 3-betting every time pre-flop. So again, in a range versus range kind of scenario, we can have every strong hand in our range where he can only have, a few. So it makes it really hard for him to decide to hero call down because just most of the time his range is just pretty handcuffed. Show up a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. I think we're definitely going to be c-betting this flop. Tens is a pretty standard call here. I think with the backdoor flush we can call and defend it, especially if we're kind of deep. And now we just hit the essential nuts, which is pretty great. I'm just going to call and probably jam rivers is the plan. That's not a river that I'm going to jam, unfortunately. That's a really gross river, actually. But I think we have nothing to do but to call. And we're really lucky on that river, actually. It's pretty disgusting that he actually has that hand there. That's just really unlucky for us, but in a sense lucky that we didn't hit a different river card, because we would be jamming there almost certainly every time. I think there's a weaker player here. When he calls on the ace-high flop, he's just almost always got it. So we're just going to go ahead and give it to him. And I think I'm going to sit out next big blind. It's been like about 45 minutes here, so I'm going to call this one a session. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this one. Thanks again for tuning into this video. Again, this was Jordan aka Angelus for PokerVIP.com. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the box below, and I'll see you guys out there on the forums.